Today's episode includes some stories that'll crawl under your skin and stay there. But before we get started, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then welcome, because that's all we do, and we upload every day. So if that's something you're into, please volunteer to walk the like button's dog. Then, halfway through, just drop the leash and whisper, "You're free now." Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Also, subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our daily uploads. Okay, let's begin.
The missing campers were never alone. Today's story takes place in Idaho's Salmon Chalice backcountry. Late September 2018. Two campers vanish near an old fire lookout. Search teams go in, radios crackle, dogs work. Then a voice in the timber starts saying one of their names. And the rule out there, the one they don't put on maps, is simple. If a voice calls your name and there isn't a mouth you can see, you don't answer. Sunday night. Rain falling in thin ropes, polite but insistent. The granite smells like a coin. Weekend traffic bleeds east. In Shoup, the cafe lights go down. The river keeps its sentence. On the third floor of the county building in Salmon, under humming fluorescence, dispatcher Kaya Merritt settles a headset and sips from a chipped mug. 41, good at hearing the difference between wind on a mic and fear in a throat. At 21:47, the primary line rings a childlike rhythm. Kaya picks up a careful male voice. "I need to report two overdue campers, my cousins. I'm next to their truck at the Loon Creek turnoff. The camp host told me to call before I get brave." Kaya goes methodical. Names: Ivor Doss, 42. Lena Doss, 38. Boise people. Left yesterday with a light kit and ridiculous amount of jerky. Destination: Ridge by the old Jarvie lookout. They brought a radio. They also brought stubbornness. "Stay with the truck," Kaya says. "Do not step into timber." Coordinates go into the form twice, clean. Deputy Roland Knapp, 39, a face that makes people tell the truth by accident, drops a cup of stew and starts his hour-long drive. Ranger Nick Salcedo checks in from a cabin near Panther Creek. Patient voice. Knows where people make their first wrong decision. By 22:40, red and blue lights lay themselves across wet trunks at Loon Creek. The blue Ford is locked. A map inside is soaked, still readable in a bleeding wet. Camp host materializes. The pair planned the ridge, backed in for an early exit. "Rain's coming," he'd warned. "Rain brings the air alive," they'd said. Nick slides the map onto the tailgate. A penciled circle on the ridge. A dotted line up the wrong drainage, then corrected like a man who doesn't like admitting guesses. Beside the circle, Lena's neat list. Stove, coffee, headlamp, prayer. "Time matters," Nick says. No volunteer conga line onto wet granite at midnight. Cousin stays with the deputy. We do this steady. At 1, they find the camp the way you sometimes do. Ghost of a new fire ring, a tiny cairn somebody couldn't resist. A boot print Rain is trying to steal. 2 sets. Walking together. Roland Marks calls it brings them back. Morning plan gets written like an anchor. Kaya works the night like a loom. Tracks down Lena's sister in Meridian, leaves a message that is compassion twice and panic never. Calls in a K-9 team ode to the county. In her log, she writes 5 quiet words only she will see. Do not answer a name. Dawn. Cloud lifts, leaving diamonds on every needle. 15 people drink black coffee at a folding table. Nix runs a finger over the map and splits the country into sectors. He adds the rule, the one you only hear from people who have earned your trust. If you hear a name and there's no visible mouth, lock eyes with your buddy, say their name, make them say yours. Do not answer anything from timber, not even if it uses your song. A new kid raises a hand. Is that folklore or a line I can put in a report? It's how you get home for lunch, Nix says. Teams move out with that respectful, quiet September pines demand. Dogs in bright vests quarter the slope. One line takes the spine, another slides into a black burn, snags like busted metronomes. Thayer, the cousin who made the call, walks with Deputy Knapp, not because he should, but because men who wait at trucks break in slow ways. At 9:19, a dog gives a small bark. I found your idea, not yet your person. Handler Ione Taggart slips among ferns and retrieves a rolled shirt under a low lodgepole limb. Damp collar. Tiny stitched L. Bag. Tag. Ritual keeps hearts from shouting. 10:52. A voice calls a name, thin through timber, left of the draw, where a baby creek is deciding what to be. Lena. 2 syllables shaped like someone speaking into a scarf. Sounds like Ivor. Except Ivor's voice usually laughs at the edges. This one doesn't. It says her name and waits like a bridge. Nix lifts a hand. Head swivel. Everyone refines a face. Thayer. Thayer. Roland. The voice tries again. Help. A dog bristles, then thinks better of it. Wind turns the voice into a trick. Now above, now behind, now whispering from the leaves at their boots. Lena. Roland plants a ribbon and a thyme on a larch and draws an arrow fatter than the rest. We don't answer, he says, calm enough to steady the world. We mark and move. By noon, sun saws through the cloud and turns steam into foxfire. Teams reset. Dogs drink in wide licks. The medic truck ladles sugar into paper cups. Kaya slides each bead of the day onto a string, times, places, and a line that means more than the paper can hold. Voice saying, Lena. No face. Afternoon, a different kind of luck. Farspur team finds a neat cone stacked beside a rock scratch. Lena, her sister will later say, loves to arrange things. The cones point toward a cleft the map calls nothing. Old guys at the cafe used to call it buzzard slot. At 16:31, they find Ivor. He's on his back, one leg crooked the wrong way, eyes open to the sky like he's willing to believe in it. Lips split white with thirst. He makes a sound that's half apology, half joy. We stayed on the spine, dropped too fast, rain shoved us into a bad shelter. We heard the lookout radio from the valley, the weather loop, thought it was a truck, followed it, found no truck. Then we heard Lena's name, my voice saying it, but not mine. I didn't answer. That's why I'm still here. Where's Lena? Nix asks from the edge of the circle. Went to water, said she'd follow a trail of tin cans and bad jokes back to me. Left a cone pile every 30 steps. Then the voice said my name, like her mouth. I said hers once, too soft for the trees to catch. After that, I held my tongue. She's been gone since just before sunup. 17:54. They find Lena. 10 minutes east, 2 pitches up, tucked into a granite room. One hand on a ledge like she meant to pull herself into another day, and paused here. Cold, not lost. Shy pulse. Hairline cut with the head's usual drama. Jerky pouch, empty. Pockets full of gravel, her attempt at a breadcrumb trail in a place that only prints with stone. Wind keeps the helicopter on a leash, so they burrito the pair in foil, wool, and intention. Move them by patient inches. Dogs trot with tails up, doing what dogs were born to do. Ivor talks about coffee like a religion. Lena says river like a baptism. On the tailgate under a county floodlight, lines running into arms, Lena gets her question to work. The voice, she tells Nix, it said his name. It came from the wrong place, above, behind, under my feet. I didn't answer. I counted to 50, then 50 again. Sat on my hands so they wouldn't lift like a trained dog. I just repeated your rule. Find a face. Say a name you can see. People get hurt up here when they answer a mouth that doesn't have their best in mind. You did right. Thayer. Because brains want drawers to push fear into we were never alone, were we? Lena gives a small, tilted smile. That's mountains for you. You're with wind. With water. With old decisions other people made and left hanging in the trees. We borrowed theirs. Wind behaves. Helicopter drops in. Medics step out with faces that make mothers cry from relief alone. They pack the dosses like a wedding dress into a trunk and lift. A scrub pine below the ridge, bows, releases, bows again. After midnight, Kaya types the sentence that chased her all day. The missing campers were never alone. She knows it's not a checkbox. She puts it in anyway. The weeks after, the Valley chews it. In diners, it was echo. On lifts, radio bounce. In coveralls, catamount. Brain mirrors, and then quieter. The one sentence that matters. If you hear your name in timber and there's no mouth in sight, don't answer. A month later, blue sky so clean it feels stolen. The Dosses bring a paper bag to the ranger cabin. Knit hats, plain and practical. On the tag, Lena's neat line for when the wind forgets itself. They sit with Nix and, briefly, Kaya. Words are carefully unimportant. Nix talks burned hills learning green. Ivor describes a mispainted bridge teaching Boise patience. Lena says she now speaks her people's names out loud each morning, not to offer anything to the air, just to remind her mouth what it's for. She adds one small thing, offhand. Counting while it called, I pictured roll call. Teacher calls your name chalk in her hand. You only say here if you can see the chalk. That helped. By next fall, a laminated card shows up on the camp host board at Loon Creek. No sermon, just a rule in rainproof letters. If you're overdue, sit, count, save heat, call only when you see a face. Do not answer the timber. No author. The host denies it, then admits he likes that he would have. Winter lays down thin law. One dawn in a high cabin, a radio unplugged says a name perfectly. The men grin like at an old joke. They say each other's names and keep making eggs. Sun clears the window. They follow the line they marked in gray light and find a snowmobiler parked like a guy at a bus stop choosing a story. He says, I heard you all night. They say, not us, friend, but we're here now. Years later, at the Shoop Cafe, Sunday closing time, you might hear it slide by. Loggers arguing about draws, a couple practicing their baby's name, somebody at the counter saying, those campers below Jarvie, they weren't alone. Nobody is out there. The hills keep you company, sometimes too well. If you catch Kaya after a shift, headset marks on her face, she won't give you a ghost story. But if you ask what she learned that September, she'll look at the river and say this: listening is work. Names are tools. Home is where you only answer when you can see who's asking. A town can hold itself together with a quiet rule repeated by people not interested in drama. She might even add, very soft, that the missing campers were never alone, and neither are you, if your hands stay steady and your mouth remembers when to keep its strength. Then she'll tip well, step into a night that smells like pine and iron and rain, and head home where a clock mutters forward, a radio sleeps politely, and the mountains lean in, listening like they always do. The door in his basement wasn't there yesterday. Late October, year 2018, West 73rd Street was getting shoved around by that lake wind, long, hard gusts that make whole blocks clench their teeth. Rain ticked the gutters like pinball. Inside a brick duplex that still smelled like plaster dust and stubborn varnish, a 37-year-old hospital electrician named Callum Brenner was doing what he did most nights: fixing his future with his hands so his head didn't wander. Callum had bought the place in June, ripped up carpet in July, learned the patience of plaster in August. By September, he could ID every pipe by sound. The furnace, original to that era when guys wore hats to breakfast, cleared its throat every evening like an old smoker, then usually behaved. Widowed at 33 by a soft word doctors hate, Callum had decided you can outwork the long hours if you give them a job. His job was this house. A blue notebook on the kitchen counter held the list. Beside it sat a chipped ham radio mug, Coil Me Maybe, that he pretended not to like. He'd been in the basement 100 times. It was a good basement by neighborhood standards. Poured walls, old coal chutes, mortared shut in the 1960s. Work sink with a stain shaped exactly like Michigan. 2 doors down there, one cream painted into a porch cubby full of sleeping paint cans. the other a janky plank into a crawl space where the October Mice Union held meetings. He knew both. He'd made peace with both. He had not met the third. At 21:42, after losing an argument with a breaker and eating dinner like a raccoon at the counter, he headed down to relight the pilot. He liked that moment, the polite click, the soft womp winter delayed by a thumb. He rounded the stair, set his phone on a joist for light, looked up, and stopped, like someone was dimming him instead of flipping him off. There was a door in the west wall. Not a door he must have missed. Not boxes stacked weird. He'd scrubbed that concrete in August with vinegar and a bad attitude. It had been wall. Now, it was a door, same in different cream as the other trim mortise latch, casing with the exact roller lint pimples from some distracted owner 3 tenants back. A strip of blue tape was slapped across the brass like a utility tag. It even crunched under his knuckle when he knocked neither hollow nor solid. A hotel of a sound, Callum said it out loud. Because good rooms appreciate honesty. That was not there yesterday. The furnace clicked, caught, and steadied as if proposing a trade. You let me keep one mystery, I'll give you heat. He stared at the tape. It said utility in tiny letters and a number no department in Cleveland uses. Upstairs, he wrote it in the blue book. Wednesday, late October, year 2018, new door, west wall, basement. He made coffee he didn't want. Then he called the one neighbor who knows the right nouns for the wrong problems. Genevieve Trask had worked 30 years in the bus yard parts department. Even her dog, Primitive Pete, followed house rules like a union contract. She'd been on West 73rd since the streetlights still rang like bells when they got swapped to sodium. Callum asked if she'd come tell him whether he'd just lost a fight with his eyes. My pleasure, she said, like someone who's risen for worse. They went down. Jen stood, silent, 10 seconds flat. Then, measuring flour careful. That was not there yesterday. Primitive Pete sat, lifted a paw, set it down. The blue tape didn't peel when Jen tested it. The brass under it was guilty clean, like it had been avoiding hands for months. She put her ear to the wood, jaw loose like a piano tuner. The worst kind of quiet, she said at last. Not a human, not a machine. Something that learned to be polite, living next to both. They left it shut, played a hand of gin upstairs. Jen insisted on losing gracefully. Callum walked her to the gate, watched Pete joy inventory the night, and because tongues check, bad teeth went down for one more look. The thing stayed a thing. In the morning, he called the utility mark line, contract inspections. They'd swing by Thursday unless the wind ate their schedule. And Otho Dwyer, night maintenance at the hospital. Collector of left-handed screwdrivers. Saint of simple machines. Otho showed at 1910 carrying a case that looked like it should say violin and didn't. Scope camera. He slid the head between casing and wall. The screen coughed up gray concrete, then darkness with the smoothness of air and the meanness of a throat. Some jokes take too much setup, Otho murmured, brushing the tape with the back of a finger. Tastes like municipal lie. They didn't open it. Otho poured exactly one finger of rye and told the story of an elevator that grew a sense of humor in a humorless building. He left the scope. Callum slept on the sofa because the living room had windows and the basement didn't. He dreamed of blue tape, a polite click, and a nurse's voice saying, "Not yet." Thursday, 14/27. Voicemail from inspections diverted to a sinkhole at Denison. Second voicemail from an unknown number, just silence that didn't know how to hold its breath. Then a whisper from very far down a hall. Don't come down while the light is wrong. He went home anyway. Top of the stairs, he made the announcement men only make to empty rooms. If you're human, show me your shoes. If you're not, invitation rescinded. The furnace behaved. The sump pump cleared its throat. He set a carpenter's lamp on the floor to make a small, honest city of light, and with a stub of chalk, he drew a line along the bottom of the door. If you can't make sense, you can measure. He knocked once. The sound came back too soft. He pressed his palm to the panel, neither warm nor cold. It felt like skin in a room that doesn't want you to cry. I don't believe in you enough to be afraid, he said, on purpose lying. Houses respect effort. He turned to leave. On the far side, something trailed a fingertip down the wood from above the latch to below it, very slow, like it was teaching itself grain. He didn't move. The chalk line held. He said his wife's name once, softly, a key to a true door. Friday, 21:15, he and Jen stood there again. Primitive Pete approved the dryer. The tape had a new diagonal crease, like a latch lifted, then politely reset. Jen hovered her hand over it like a candle. You are not the first house on this block to breathe into the wrong room, she said. In 2006, during the epic flood, the city dug out the storm line in the alley and found an old brick run, prohibition beer, and better stories. They sealed what they could see. They did not seal what refused to admit wanting sealing. That's where the undertalk lives, she said. Not your house's fault, it learned the language. Not yours for hearing it. We lean a chair and don't make introductions. Be here at 10 with coffee and a man who likes rules, Callum said. She brought the sheriff. Sheriff Whitaker looked like he still hauled hay for friends. Face built for learning the same story from both sides and deciding where mercy fits. He listened to Callum, to Gen, to Pete, who sneezed once, officially endorsing the facts. Whitaker pressed his ear to the panel, knocked a pattern. Too slow, pause. Two no one uses unless they suspect a test. The door answered, one slow, three quick like it understood and preferred to show off. We're going to treat this like a person who talks too much and too sweet to a child, Whitaker said. No drama. We don't answer. We call boring people with rope courtesy over magic. At 10:50, Building Inspector Ninette Polk arrived, clipboard, caution tape, and two public works guys who dig with shovels and silent. She measured, tapped the concrete with a screwdriver, jaw loose, head cocked. Double wall, she said. Face wall. Behind it, not wall. Behind that, not our business yet. The plan, open the outside from the alley, look at it like breakfast. If breakfast looks like sin, you eat elsewhere. By noon, the alley had a careful hole. Brick, then more brick, then a slump of coal pretending it wasn't old. Ninette rolled her light into the throat beam, sliding along clay to a small cleared space. A tin cup, a folded blanket whose corners remembered hands, a stone pile with soot above it, a fire where fire made no sense. We've had squatters, she said. We've had people who didn't choose to be squatters, and we've had tunnels that confuse maps. This is a little of everything. Whitaker braced a gloved hand on the edge, leaned without betting his weight on anything foolish. At dusk, we come with two more bodies and a rope round my waist. We stand in your west room and say hello in a voice that can't hurt anyone. He took his pen and signed the blue tape, 10:16 on a Saturday. No underline, no smiley. Dusk. The wind inhaled and held. 3 across at the bottom of the stairs. The house delivered one timid knock, then, like it decided it needed a new tactic, went silent. Whitaker tied his rope to an old ceiling ring, laundry duty in another life, double knotted. He laid his palm on the tape, talked to the house like a dog flirting with a bad idea. We are not setting our tongues on this latch tonight. They moved the chair, lifted the latch without breaking the tape. The door opened a finger's width on its own resistance. Air came through at the temperature of old apology, coal, and long rain. His shoulder light showed a low brick run, 4 courses high, then a gap all along the top like the mason knew better and got paid by a man who didn't. In the dust beyond, 4 finger marks, evenly spaced. Someone who'd learned to count to 4 and wanted company, and a 5th, shorter one like a tired heart. Whitaker didn't step through. He bent, lowered his head, and said a name to no one, like a midwife teaching an empty room the word it's waiting for. Is anyone here who can stand the sound of their own name? 20 heartbeats, then a cough from the corridor, not brave, not sick, small on purpose. A voice, careful, like someone who only wants to borrow the part of the law that cares more about living than rules. I am hungry. Come into the light then, Whitaker said, measured. No names, no introductions to the dark. A face glanced into the cone, then jerked out. Quick. Private decision. The figure didn't cross. Do you have a sandwich? They asked. Jen started to answer. Whitaker lifted a hand. The room obeyed. We have a sandwich. You may have it on this side. He set it on the brick, stepped back a generous pace. A thin hand took it. Gratitude made of bread and shame filled the small room. I didn't steal the ring, the voice said. The ring was already in here. It's welded to the wall. We'll speak again in the morning, Whitaker said, as if this were any kitchen, any night. If you're still here, that would be a blessing. The dark laughed, once surprised at the word blessing. Then, I'll be here, the rain decided to stay. They closed the door. No chair, sometimes chairs are theater when you need policy. Sleep came in the way it does when a house tries to grow a new tongue. Morning, the chalk line had a clean nick where the door had opened and closed. The tape now had 2 creases. In the alley, the little camp had a second cup that hadn't been there. On the brick, a note, careful hand, fountain pen tidy. Thank you, I won't be here long if you leave it. I know the way that does not ask you to break your rules. I followed voices, and that was my mistake. I am leaving now by the other mouth. Nanette read it, folded once, bagged it, dated it in words events like this should resist numbers. Sometimes people want a story, she said. Sometimes they want a door that says, no, we'll build you the second one. They hired masons from Ohio City argument-winning walls. A second wall went up in front of the first, tied with rebar that enjoyed its job. They pumped the crawl with flowable fill. Fill is kinder than concrete. Cut a new drain to the alley with the city's blessing, which almost never happens and did. They left the door hung for the sake of the room so a man, mug in hand, a year from now, could touch a latch and remember that fear behaves when it isn't fed. One Sunday in December, after the work and after the lake found its winter voice, Callum stood at the bottom of the stairs, set a sandwich and a thermos on the brick, no speech, no theater, listen. The house was just a house. You don't get to grow a new door without telling me first, he said, mostly to make the air file the sentence somewhere. Winter settled. Primitive Pete suffered boots. Jen taught Callum to let houses tell their little understories without volunteering his name. Whitaker sent a holiday card with a knot on the front. Otho reclaimed his scope, pretended to be offended at how clean the lens came back. Nanette drove by twice in January to make sure the wall looked like it meant it. In spring, the city found more legacy brick down the alley and filled that too. The report used the word legacy like a period. Every now and then after midnight, wind slides between those houses like a memory that learned to walk. The furnace coughs a sound you could mishear as a polite knock. A man stands in his basement with his palm on a harmless latch and says the names of the people who made a strange night decent: Genoveva, Otho, Ninette, Whitaker, and the name of the woman he loved, because names are keys, and grief is a door you don't open so much as a company. Then he turns out the light. Basements have long jobs. They don't need help from shadows that think they're clever. If you ever buy an old house in a city that keeps secrets under its sidewalks, you might wake up to a door where plaster swore no door would be. You don't owe it curiosity at midnight. You owe it a list, a lamp that won't lie, a neighbor who can make quiet into a tool, and the dull bravery the trades teach. Knock once, count to 20. Call someone with rope, and if a voice on the other side calls your name like it's entitled to it, remember the single sentence that carried an ordinary man and his unremarkable house through a night when the city tried to breathe through his wall. We're not answering, we're not leaving, we're coming back with more people and better light. The girl who walked home twice. It was 1930-something. The air smelled like wood smoke and apples. Drizzle turned every porch bulb into a little planet. The high school had cut loose early for the game in Lexington. Band kids fogged up a bus with laughter. Tires hummed along the Maury. I own small like a willow, tough like one too, didn't go. She'd promised her mother Yara she'd be through the door by 2000, no later. The mountain shadow drags night down early in Rockbridge County. Everyone knows that. Pea coat from a thrift store, one button that didn't match, scarf a shade that couldn't pick a side between green and blue, hand knit by her aunt. Everyone knew Ione. She worked mornings at the bakery on Nelson Street, slipped the paper through Mrs. Kemp's slot at the White House with the red door, could identify every dog in 3 blocks by bark alone. Her father, line cook, serial kitchen quitter, had left in May. The kind of leaving that makes a clock too loud. Ione had sworn, with a 16-year-old's fatal sincerity, "I won't be that kind of gone." At 1940, she waved off her best friend Wren at the feed store corner and ducked into the drizzle, taking her usual 3-block shortcut, hardware store. Mr. Ancher, Petrie sweeping like he meant to sand the sidewalk down to Memory Post Office that still smelled faintly of floor wax, then the alley behind the funeral home because, as Ione liked to say, the living cause more trouble than the dead in Rockbridge Hollow. 1952. A guy in a pickup easing off a steep driveway saw that indecisive scarf flash by. 2 fingers up from the wheel, small town salute. 1954, wind rattled corrugated tin on the vacant lot fence. 1956, misses. Kemp stretched her back, peered past a thin curtain, clocked a girl head down, hands in pockets, shoulders squared against the wet. 1958. Yara's porch light burned a little cone in the rain and turned drizzle into strings. 2000. The door did not open. By 2010, Yara was pacing the living room like she was housebreaking a nervous dog. Up slow, back slow. 2022, she called Wren. Surprise, then careful. Yes, they'd split by the feed store. Yes, Ione was fine. And there had been a man at the vending machine, Marine Corps cap, too new for the face wearing it. 2030. Deputy Rowan Deek knocked hat off, voice steady. He said the sentence every good town cop has to learn. Let us be wrong with you for 2 hours. They weren't wrong for 2 hours. They were wrong for 3 days. Night 1. Flashlights swept the seam from feed store to front stoop. Same bad gravel by the alley. Same puddle at the sycamore. Same warped funeral home step everyone knows to skip. Drizzle turned into mean rain. 0320. The band bus came back. Windows fogged a different way. Kids fell into waiting pickups. Mothers squinted through wipers. A boy named Ash told his dad by accident the worst sentence. I saw Ione behind the funeral home. She had her scarf. When? Just now. And when he turned to point, there was only rain. Saturday pooled in neighbors' kitchens, coffee, quiet, too many glances at the clock. Sunday, the county AR's net droned on the old repeaters. Negative contact. Monday morning, the school band played half a shade slower in the auditorium. The principal looked 10 years older when he lifted his head. At 16:20, that gray Monday, headlights smeared along Route 11. Mrs. Kemp phoned Yara. Yara ran. Mrs. Kemp, who hadn't run for anything since 1989, got there on ring 2, breathless and unpoetic. She is on your porch. Ione stood under the porch light, hair slicked flat, scarf dark with rain, coat buttoned wrong, hands in pockets, eyes bright in a way the sky hadn't earned. The bulb made a perfect oval on the boards, like the house had been waiting for its mark. She blinked once, slow, smiled, small and real. The exact smile she wore, setting a cinnamon bun on a plate like a promise. The sound Yara made porchwood still remembers it. Hands to her daughter's face. Sweetie, why did you make me wait? Ione stepped in like she'd only just noticed, wet as cold after 10 minutes. Shoes kicked off in their forever spot. She looked around, stared a beat longer at the stove clock, the plain round one rust comma on the wall under the nail. Half a laugh, swallowed. Deputy Deek came in careful, body language that said, I belong here, but I won't make the room smaller. Ione, he said, in that slow jailhouse tone that lets people choose their own shape of words. Genuine surprise from her. Deputy Deke, did you get a new car? He hadn't. She tipped her head like a bird when a window stops offering sky. Then why is it so quiet? Dr. Sigrid Hall, neat as a single sentence, took temp, checked pupils, asked, what did you do between Friday and Monday? Walking home. No flinch from the doc, just a neat note. Sometimes you leave people the only word they're willing to carry. More questions. What do you remember? Gray dog by the Coopers. The sound at the pipe bridge. The man with the new hat. Then, like 3 rooms misstacked. I don't know the rest. Her mouth around the O made Yara flatten both palms on the table like she was steadying the whole house. 3 weeks. Rockbridge Hollow learned a delicate routine. They let Ione be. Dawn at the bakery. 2-handed grip on the sheet pan. Reverent buns on paper. She stared at the post office bulletin board until the pushpins shone. Guidance counselor Emmer Holliday sat with her twice a week gentle work, invite a memory to take one step without pushing it down the stairs. On good light days, Ione would offer a new pebble. The river slapping the old mill race concrete. A walnut leaf rafting a puddle. Someone saying her name like a question, and she not turning her head. December showed up in one unsentimental dump of snow and refused to leave. Yara learned to sleep an hour at a time. The wood stove learned the new schedule without judgment. Christmas came with casseroles, feed store gift cards, and one perfect scarf from a woman who couldn't afford to buy it and a woman who couldn't stand to see the old one anymore. By March, the Maury pretended to be more than a river, and a fisherman found the marine cap downriver of the pipe bridge. He called it in and didn't touch it. Like a weird engine smell under your hood, you hand straight to a pro. The man who'd worn it had drifted back to Roanoke the day after Ione was found, paid his motel bill, smiled at an elevator that apologized for itself, and left. The cap had no story the town could use. Spring, summer, peepers screaming, telephone wires singing when the wind drops off the ridge full of opinions. In September, 1 year minus 2 months, 17-year-old Ione stood in Yara's kitchen at 1943, poured tea she didn't want. Tired in a way sleep can't fix. Yara, to keep from saying one thing too loud and scaring 3 others, wrote a safe talk list on the back of an envelope. She never got to use it, because in 1947 the front door opened with the exact little 2-tug rhythm of someone who lives there. In the entry stood Ione. Peacoat, mismatched button, that undecided scarf. Hair wet from a drizzle that did not exist on Nelson Street, eyes bright in a way that made the room back up by instinct. The Ione holding the teacup rattled the saucer, set it down, turned toward herself and made a sound. The porch calls a bird hitting glass. Doorway Ione smiled, small and real. I'm home, Mama. The stove clock ticked one very loud second and then remembered its manners. Deputy Deke again hat in hand. Dr. Hall's stethoscope already warmed the way good doctors do. Counselor Emmer put both palms on the table and didn't sit until Yara did. The town did not come. A small place knows when a crowd ruins the edges of a miracle. They asked gently, when did you start walking? Where did you turn? Did anyone speak? What did the river sound like? Doorway Ione answered with the same script as a year before. Dog, pipe, bridge, hat, walnut leaf. The difference wasn't the words, it was the way the room caught them. Every sentence landed like the place had already set a plate. Deke stood in the kitchen threshold and looked both ways. He saw 2 girls, he saw one, he saw none. He kept his face steady so the room could borrow it. Sheriff, Judge Crease, how do you write this in a report? Breathe with me, the practical spells. They kept both Ionesses in the room because what else do you do? Dr. Hall took 2 pulses, one just off the other. Checked eyes, left, right, months backward, both did it. 2 wrists, 2 heartbeats, both wrong in different right ways. Her face gave nothing away and everything all at once. 2140. Somewhere down the block, a stubborn riding mower coughed into one more season. Emmer broke the spell with two perfect lines. We're going to give the new arrival an apple, and then gentler. And we should stop calling her the new arrival. They gave her the apple. She held it like a small planet, looked at it, at the clock, at Yara, at Ione, at the hallway, to the bedroom where long division and bird names had been learned. Then, matter of fact, not triumphant, not afraid, there are two of me here. The tone wasn't a request. It was a math answer. She had finished counting and was waiting to be told what the number meant. The town did what towns do when the world tilts and insists it's always been level. They made order. Cedar chest to the living room. Second bed. Pastor Rowe came kind mouth. Better history. He knows how to talk without turning a room into a church by force. The sheriff, the judge, and a university woman from Lexington with a voice that makes you believe machines can help without showing off. Her term, identity event. It looked great in a report and was useless at the kitchen table. That night, Yara dozed and woke, and dozed and woke. Twice, she stood in the doorway and watched two girls sleep by lamplight. One hand out of each blanket, palm open the exact way Ione had always slept, as if catching sleep required a hand ready. Twice, her mother hand reached to pull a blanket higher and shook in a brand new way. Morning stretched the house back to its old shape. The bus hissed at 07:45. The driver glanced at the porch without meaning to. Mrs. Kemp knocked once, left rolls, and a note with only the date she believes. Inked things are harder to argue with. The university woman returned, politely eager. Separate mic channel. Smell test, cinnamon, eyes closed. A metronome on the table, whose pulse keeps time. She packed up at noon with good manners and eyes full of a curiosity that doesn't need oxygen. For a while, Rockbridge Hollow held. The girls washed dishes in a choreography that invented itself in 48 hours. Tea the same way. They walked the block at dusk together. They did not cut behind the funeral home. When they slept, their breathing went just out of phase, then remembered itself. Like two clocks learning, they didn't have to impress each other. Then the bill came due. Day 10. A pale circle under older Ione's left collarbone, coin-sized, cooler than the skin. Dr. Hall's smile stopped at her mouth. Her eyes kept the truth. Sketch on the chart, pictures keep you honest when words want to pose. Day 11. A match on newer Ione's right collarbone. Day 12. Two circles bloom, each wrist, opposite sides. Opposite girls, like a mirror taking inventory. By day 14, the girls had learned to move like two people carrying one big tray through a narrow door. Day 19, they'd invented a way to argue that didn't injure the room. Day 21, the circles resolved into a constellation the doctor couldn't name, and then, just as impolitely as they appeared, they faded. Not all at once, one by one, soft as a hand, smoothing a wrinkle back into weekday skin. Day 24. Dusk, the hour when Rockbridge problems either introduce themselves or forgive you for not noticing newer Ione stood on the porch, undecided scarf at her throat, and looked toward the feed store, the funeral home, and that walnut root that heaves the curb. I should walk, she said. Older Ione, very quiet. I'm tired of walking. Both were true. Yara chose the loudest kind of bravery that makes no noise. We'll walk together to Pastor Rowe's, she said, and lend him our feet for one block. Then we'll come home. They did. The town watched by sweeping already clean porches. The girls returned, ate, slept. The circles faded, like a bruise deciding not to be dramatic. Day 31, 05:20. Newer Ione rose, made tea she didn't want, folded the undecided scarf on the table, smoothed it with both hands, thumbed the mismatched button, and laughed without humor, private joke between her and the world. She opened the door to rain that wasn't there for anyone else and a porch light that was. She stood on the exact board as the year before. Turned, as if to give someone permission to follow. No one did. Step 1. Step 2. By step 3, Yara was awake. A mother knows her child's stares. Ione, she said, not church voice, house voice. The girl smiled. I am going home. She stepped into a drizzle only she could feel. The porch light held her one heartbeat too long. She walked 3 blocks, hands deep in pockets, cut behind the funeral home, past Mrs. Kemp's window. Mrs. Kemp stood to stretch and saw a girl head down through sheer curtain and did not lift it. She had learned a hard lesson once and refused to write a new one. Oh, 5:54. Yara's door opened again. Older Ione, the one who'd returned that impossible Monday in the year 2004, stood in the entry with her scarf in one hand and coat over the other arm, crying and not crying, joy and disaster braided. Mama! No words back. Some truths are for skin, not air. Yara crossed the room, palms on her girl's face, while the clock hung its seconds without comment. By noon, the rain that hadn't been real for anyone else gave the day back. Dr. Hall, efficient, kind, wrote 2 lines she'd never bother a medical board with. Their grammar wouldn't survive. Older Ione, warm, steady pulse, lesions fading, appetite back. Newer Ione gone. Pastor Rowe delivered a casserole he hadn't cooked. He's learned how to honor offerings without stealing their credit. I don't know what to call the second walking, he admitted, voice low. The first wasn't a trick. The last wasn't a theft. When the porch asked for a witness, they gave it one. That was right. Weeks stretched. The house learned gratitude without building a festival around it. Ione went back to mornings at the bakery, face to the heat, wrists remembering cinnamon's weight. The Tuesday dollar tip from Mrs. Kemp returned some customs, survive any weirdness. One Sunday, Wren braided Ione's hair on the stoop and didn't cry until the knot that spot where promises and prayers looked the same. Deputy Deke waved with 2 fingers and didn't slow. Habits keep towns from unraveling. Sometimes in late fall, when the walnut drops a single leaf onto a puddle and the river at the pipe bridge sounds like the old mill remembering. People here say, without moving their lips much, that they saw Ione walk home again. They don't mean a ghost. They mean a woman carrying her own shape through weather that didn't deserve a name, and for 15 sidewalk steps they felt porch lights turn on in their chests and were kinder to their own breath. Years later, one Sunday in the year 2019, Ione worked the bakery counter with her daughter, on her hip, hair loose because the day hadn't asked for more. A stranger out of state ordered a coffee and said it the way outsiders do. Are you the girl who walked home twice? Ione looked at him, then at her daughter, then at Nelson Street drawing its honest line toward the river. I'm the woman who did her best in Rockbridge Hollow, she said, kind, firm. The stranger made a sound halfway between sorry and disappointed and took his coffee to go. That night, the porch light over Yara's door hummed like it has for 15 years. Little transformer in a housing that outlived storms, bulbs, and one remarkable season. Walnut leaves fell in 2s and 3s. The stove clock kept obedient time even after time had misbehaved. Yara sat in her chair, listened to the night count itself, and felt the house settle into its old bargain with joy and fear. She spoke one true sentence into a room that had earned it. My girl walked home. My girl walked home twice. He moved into a house that wasn't empty. All right, today's story takes place in a quiet Hudson River town, late October 2021. It starts like a normal move-in. It does not stay that way. Rowan Kell is 37, lean, practical, the kind of guy who has carried other people's boxes for years and finally gets to carry his own. He buys a tall, tired Victorian on Wemple Street Widow's Walk, slouching porch, stained glass over the stairs. On paper, the house has been empty for a season. Before that, a retired school librarian lived here. The listing says, charming details. It does not list the other detail. Listings never do. Night 1. The Hudson is dark as melted iron. A freight moans across the bridge. Leaves drag the gutters. Rowan backs a rental truck to the curb, sets a hand on the rail, and feels old paint give. Inside smells like dust and lemon oil. The floor has that note old houses sing when they map where feet prefer to travel. He makes a bed, sort of. Cooks eggs in his grandmother's pan, eats by the open kitchen door. To the west, wind chimes arguing with themselves. To the east, a radio playing Old Soul so quietly it feels like someone pacing a kitchen. 11:48, he takes the trash to the alley, inhales the cold. A cat posts up at the fence like a bouncer. He laughs, goes in, deadbolt, chain, lights off except a small lamp in the front parlor. 12:17. From the kitchen, a drawer opens, wood on wood, soft, then closes. He's not asleep. He's in that new house mode where your brain catalogs every sound like pop quiz questions. The drawer again. Same speed, same breath. A single spoon ticks the divider like a hand lifted it, weighed it, set it back. Rowan breathes, runs the script. Houses settle. Pipes rehearse. Mice sound huge at night. He pads in on cold boards. Every drawer is flush. The counter is polite and empty. Moonlight makes a pale square on the table. He opens the top drawer and shuts it, imitating the sound. Okay, brain, there you go. He puts water on for tea because people who aren't afraid make tea at midnight, and that's when he sees it. On the pantry door, shoulder height, a little wax circle, a fingertip habit mark. Years of touch, wiped and redrawn. Not fresh, not ancient, just used. Morning is chores, locks, heat, chimney. The locksmith, Nate, admires the old brass and swaps the cylinder. A neighbor shows up with a casserole wrapped in a cherry towel. Her name's Avril Peak. She bakes when weather thinks too hard. She mentions the librarian kept hours you could set a watch by and casually says, if the attic fusses after midnight, check radiators before raccoons. These old girls bang. After lunch, the house tells him a secret. In the coat closet, his elbow finds a seam. He presses. A narrow panel sighs open steep servant steps between pantry and the back corner upstairs. He shuts it, opens it again, because that's what you do when a wall suddenly becomes a door and dusts the threshold to see if anything uses it later. That night, the river breathes colder. He writes a list at the kitchen table. 12:20. Toothbrush in his mouth. The dumbwaiter slides 2 inches and stops. Rope creaks. Goes still. He watches the pantry door in the mirror until the fog clears. 1:44, he wakes to the smell of toast. The toaster is unplugged. He quietly laughs at himself and rolls over. Day 3. Riverwalk, hardware store, Goodwill drop. He returns at 4 and through the frosted front glass sees a shaped shoulder, hand step back. He enters slow. The air smells faintly of lilac drawer sachets. On the entry table, a small tissue bundle. Inside, a brass key, smooth as a worry stone, stamped with a single letter B and a scratched number 1. Not one of his. In the kitchen, a thin line of flour has moved, like a cup was set and lifted. A cup is clean, drying on the towel. In the pantry, the dumbwaiter rope quivers and stills. At the back stair threshold where he dusted, half-moon prints. Not boots, not bare, soft sole, small or careful. Rowan opens the closet panel and speaks into that narrow dark, calm. I own this house. I move slow. I don't throw people away. If you're real and you want to stay real, tell me your name. He hears a decision being made. A scuff at the top. A pause on the third tread. That small, quick run we all do to pretend we're not afraid. She appears on the last step. Late 50s, hair pinned, cardigan mended, with proud little stitches, wool socks in tired slippers. Her eyes scan, land on his, and choose honesty. I'm Imrie Blakely. I looked after Miss Renner for a year and a half after the snow that broke her hip. I stayed after the service because the realtor kept telling me the date and I couldn't hear it. The pantry door knows me. The back stair knows me. I didn't mean to startle you. I made tea because a house should know the sound. Whatever speech Rowan thought he'd give, gone. He says the one true sentence he has. I wondered if the dumbwaiter was flirting with me. Imri almost smiles. The key? Service key, she says. Miss Renner gave it to me when the ramp went in. I hid it under the flour tin because I hide important things in unimportant places. You were at the river. I set it out when I heard you would fit your own name here. Rowan. That's a name that can learn a house. They move to the kitchen like two people agreeing not to break anything. In better light, he sees her cardigan buttons are all wrong sizes, her amber ring chipped smooth by years, and her hands jar-opening hands. She apologizes for the flour. She baked biscuits yesterday because the house woke up hungry. There are 3 in a tin, second shelf. She's not a thief. Then I owe you butter, he says, and the kettle, which has been placed cold on a burner out of habit, gets clicked on for real. Over tea, she gives him the owner's manual, no inspector rights, where radiators bang after rain, how the pantry hinge forgives more quickly if you hum, wax the dumbwaiter rope in November, scold it in July. The cellar light needs 2 breaths to remember it's a light. The center post should have been replaced 20 years ago. The house forgives it monthly. The drawer, top right, always slides back a spoon's width. Miss Renner kept a rubber band there because elastic keeps secrets better than a latch. The sound he heard was the spoon settling. The house was pointing at the elastic. Imri stands. I'm in your way. I meant to say goodbye and got embarrassed. I'll leave by the back stair. I'll leave the key. If the pipes talk too much, call. Rowan surprises them both. Stay for supper. Averill brought a casserole. I repay towns by eating what they hand me. They eat coats on because the heat schedule's still formal. Imri tells small, dignified stories. Miss Renner sang morning hymns without believing because habit and comfort share a coat. The back bedroom, under the little eave, wakes early on snow days. Whoever sleeps there will always beat the plow to the first cup. The cast iron sink has a comma-shaped chip, permission to keep going when a sentence seems finished. Before she leaves, Imri asks for a plain blessing. Not church, just something to keep people from sharpening themselves on the wrong edges. She closes her eyes, breathes once, and says to the floorboards, "We will act like neighbors, even when we don't believe in that word. We will be dull when the house asks us to be dull. We will answer with our bodies only when we are sure our names will be kept. We will not talk to empty rooms about the wrong things, not after dark." The panel closes on her shoulder. The quiet that follows feels chosen, not imposed. Rowan drops the service key in a little dish by the door. Tools like to know where they live. Weeks pass. He learns the wall of stained glass catches fire at a certain hour. He files a note with the county to acknowledge the back stair and the title. Some arrangements need paper when a house changes names. He returns Averill's towel with a loaf of something he hopes counts as baking. Sometimes he finds signs of Imri that aren't mistakes. A box of matches where there weren't any, a clean cloth folded where he'd left a crumpled one, a tidy list on the underside of a pantry shelf, wax rope, check lint trap, tuck draft snake. He writes thank you in the margin with a dull pencil. Late November, Averill appears with a county inspector who measures politely and asks the best question a bureaucrat can ask. Does this panel count as a door or a hatch? Rowan says it counts as a secret that deserves to be acknowledged. The inspector actually writes that down. That night, the wind returns with a dry old paper hand. Far on the river, a horn pulls a long, low goodbye that never is. At 1:44 in the Eve bedroom, Rowan wakes and listens. Radiator tap, dumbwaiter's shy inch, the spoon's little settle, a jar lid pop like someone forgot to loosen it. He smiles into the dark and whispers the rule he's learned here. Not answering. Not tonight. In December, the first snow is generous. Rowan learns to broom the steps like porchmen do, always pushing to the same drift, so it learns its place. Imri leaves a cream card with her new address. Basement studio, window facing a black walnut, part-time job at the county historical typing ledgers, saying names out loud so they don't think they're finished. She asks one favor. There's a trunk in the attic. Miss Renner's aunt, Minta Thorne, kept a diary for 50 years, careful and mean in the best way. The family would like the trunk if it can come down without swearing at the rafters. They climb the front stairs on purpose. The attic opens with paint stick reluctance, then generosity. Boxes are labeled in a librarian's hand, winter scarves, not this one, photographs, country cousins, bird journals, 1980 to 2010. The trunk waits under the peak leather straps, tack heads like stars. They don't open it. Not yet. They carry it down between them one step at a time, like moving a sleeping parent. It rests on folded towels in the hall overnight because old things deserve a chance to decide to be seen again. Next day, the niece Lorna Vetch arrives with grocery tulips and a cake. In the parlor light, they lift out muslin-wrapped books, a cloth bag of buttons, a county fair postcard for a totally average pie that still won a ribbon, a small silver bell on frayed red ribbon, and 3 glass marbles that, for no reason, never lost their shine. They leave the bell and the marbles. The books go with Lorna. She cries. No one apologizes. Imre thanks the air, and without looking at Rowan, squeezes his forearm. This house could have eaten the trunk. You didn't let it. The town weaves itself in. Lux Odea, the sash guy, fixes a window in exchange for shelves and a long story about a boat. Avril brings a pie when the weatherman says icy mix. Sometimes Imre knocks at the front, sometimes she ghosts the back stair. Either way, she says hello like joining a sentence, not starting one. January. A title office woman arrives, shivering with a folder. We're filing a small correction. Our system dislikes a door inside a closet. We're trying to teach it manners. She looks past him once, homesick, and says, My mother used to tell me, the walls aren't thin, honey. The walls listen. Be boring on purpose. See how long the trouble lasts. By March, the house is ordinary, which, if you've ever lived with an old place, means dear. At 1:44, the kitchen makes the spoon sound and then doesn't. He doesn't get up. He thinks about that first night and his urgent need to explain things. He thinks about the word empty and realizes it's never been fair to rooms or to people. He thinks about the service key in its dish, the wax circle on the pantry door, the trunk asleep in another house now, and the sentence that has started living under his tongue, we are boring on purpose when the house asks us to be. Spring loosens the river's shoulder, sycamores light up pale green, windows remember they have hinges. On a Saturday in late April, he hosts a small dinner. Avril, Lux, Imre, Lorna. The stained glass holds a sunbeam like a jewel you don't have to own to admire. They eat food that doesn't try too hard. Say names. Avoid lazy. How's work? When the dumbwaiter creaks, everyone notices and then lets it be. That's what families do for the oldest relative in the room. Night falls. Dishes done. Leftovers sent home. Rowan stands in the hall, touches the pantry with the back of his fingers. The wax circle is nearly rubbed away, worn down by his own small reverence. He clicks the chain, turns the deadbolt, sets the kettle just to tell the house what time it is. From the back stair, a single tread answers. Not a knock, not a warning, just wood on wood. Patience. A place teaching a person to hear the difference. Rowan doesn't ask who, he doesn't answer. He folds the cherry print towel and tucks it in the drawer where elastic lives. He breathes in, breathes out. The night listens back, and it does not feel empty at all. What happened inside the tunnel changed him forever. It starts with first snow over the Cheat River, late November, year 2011. The kind of ash-colored flurry that only sticks where the mountain keeps its shade. Down in the cut, where an old railroad spur once ran through Brushy Mountain, there's a brick-lined tunnel that still breathes iron and limestone like it never retired. Locals know. Places like that are older than whatever story you brought with you. The man who walked in that night was 38-year-old Thayer Mott. 2 years home from a blistering overseas contract where dawn came with a buzzer and the heat tried to erase you daily. Back in West Virginia, he did county roads, cones, culverts, sleeves, rolled exactly the way your grandfather approves of. Off the clock, he carried radios for fun, listened to the weather net the way other men listened to baseball. Thayer lived alone in a small cottage that apologized every winter for one window that never sealed right. And he had a rule: write things down and the world behaves, at least for a while. At exactly 1950, by a cheap, luminous watch whose hands never lied, Thayer stepped into the Brushy portal. He'd told dispatch Lenox Vale that he'd walk the right-of-way from Brushy to Quarry, check drains, note a small rock slide from last week, headlamp, warm white, a spare in his pocket because batteries lie. He descended the stone throat. Brick arched overhead, ballast underfoot, old rails long since lifted, clean for quick money. He kept to the shoulder, counted steps, scraped slate from the crown with the toe of his boot, and wrote little facts on a card because little facts keep the big ones honest. 50 steps. The foot sound changed dry to damp. The tunnel sound, river on stone, temperature wind, steady drips settled around him. And then at 2012, something new slid in beside him. Not ahead, not behind, beside. A girl's voice. Not echo, not machine. A child's cadence without the child's confidence. First a rising vowel like someone tuning their courage. Then a single word delivered with precise hope. Thayer. Tuclo. He did not answer. In Monongahela County, rule number 1 for deep places is simple. When the dark learns your proper name, do not answer. The voice tried again. Thayer. A tiny clatter shoe to bottle somewhere along the brick. A little grit slithered down the wall. Thayer laid his left palm flat to the tunnel to tell his nerves where his body ended, lifted his radio with his right, and went bureaucratic on purpose. County Mott, Brushy Tunnel, on foot, moving west. I have a voice event. Log it at 2012. I'm not answering. Continuing slow to center. Line of retreat established. Over. Lennox came back with the calm you hear from storm spotters who've seen it all. Copy voice event. Keep that lamp honest. And if the dark tries to be clever, you be boring back. Thayer moved 10 careful steps. The story he didn't request kept coming. The floor sagged, a half-inch subsurface water chewing quietly at the bed. The left wall had the tiniest bow. A weeping drain left a snail-clean stripe. He crouched, touched the wet, tasted iron and cold limestone, flagged it, kept going. The voice shadowed him, not obedient, but parallel. Third try, it used the weapon, it had his name, and then added a confession. Even worse in a tunnel. I followed the light and I can't find it now. The hiss after the last consonant, tears. He pictured a dozen real kids from a dozen real houses. He ignored every single picture. He reached the midpoint. Roof resonance turned musical, air more stone than river, that weird acoustic almost song round spaces get. He let the headlamp rest on his boots and counted his heart twice. That's when the tunnel itself changed its mind. A long, deep breath in the brick. A liquid rush underfoot like a drain clearing its throat after months. And from far ahead, one hollow knock as if wood tapped wood in a place with no wood. County, he said evenly. New sounds, water movement under bed. I don't love the word void, so I won't use it, but the floor is considering options. I'm heading quarry side and will hold. Over. 10 minutes into that retreat, the brick made a quiet, serious sound. Only people who've been around masonry hear mortar unlatching. He shot the lamp up. A hair-fine seam ran lengthwise across the crown, like a hand-drawn horizon. He didn't run, he left. The daylight made the world small again. He sat on a frost-etched limestone chunk and breathed until gravity stopped arguing. He waited for backup. Sheriff Enoch Pyatt arrived ex-mine rescue, slow until work begins. Good lamp. Rope in a hasty coil. He listened without interruption, nodded once like the night had finally learned to tell its story right. They went in together. Pyatt pushed a broader beam holes live where danger sits. The seam was worse. 3 bricks down, the line dropped like a child slipping while holding hands. Then the voice returned. Not Thayer this time. One word that made both men remember there was a ridge above them and an even bigger sky above that. Daddy. Pyatt went to one knee, palm on brick, like you calm an old dog. He didn't answer the voice. He addressed the wall. We're not breaking you tonight. No names. We'll bring math, shoring, and bored people who'd rather argue football than be brave. A small clatter. 30 paces ahead, standing water, a foam cup with a crescent bite drifting, ripples walking out, dying polite. They backed. They called in 2 volunteers with timbers and wedges. Inside, they propped either side of the seam so Goodwood could talk to bad ideas. Denied, the voice grew patient in a nasty way, humming, please, measuring consciences, waiting for a slip. Pyatt looked at the crew, head out. To Thayer, your report will say we stayed for the welfare check, left for structural reasons. The other reason they didn't say, the seam and the voice had begun to sound like the same thing. The county fenced Brushy indefinitely, which translated means permanently. Teenagers found new holes. Grown men found other ways to leave their lives for an hour. Thayer went back to culverts and shoulders and the safe ache of good work. But the tunnel wasn't done with him. January brought gray armor to the river, wind to the sycamores, and a call from the county, meet Hobie Kress at the quarry side. Hobie was a snowshoe happy content guy who posted reverent videos in places that do not want influencers. He'd filmed himself stepping 5 feet inside the arch and dusting snow off his hat like he was blessing it. The county wanted a conversation, not cuffs. Against his will, Thayer liked Hobie. Clean cut, the smile of a man forgiven by the world for 30 years. Thayer said, the brick is tired, the river is mean, the air is not your friend. For once, Hobie listened. Then Hobie said something that wiped the smirk off. Fate. Thought I heard a kid in there. Thayer asked, what did she say? Hobie blinked, just my name. So Thayer started stopping by the portal after supper. Not to be a hero, to be a witness. Some nights need witnesses. Late February, year 2012, thaw hit too fast. The valley filled with water's angry negotiations. 2 a.m., the volunteer chief blows the horn. Pyatt calls Thayer the kind of hour you don't justify your choice of company. At Brushy, the fence lay meek in briars. The tunnel exhaled a runner's breath. They set a line, moved to mark 3, and stopped, floor sound wrong. Pyatt's ankles, calibrated by years, said, Hollow wants a friend. Down tunnel, a light, not theirs. Clean, white, fresh batteries, eager to please. A man's voice, Mara, Mara, honey, answer me. Then the noise rescue people know in their bones. A foot into nothing, Scrabble. A half-swallowed curse because the man believed in God and wanted his attention, not anybody else's. Thayer dimmed, angled, reached, and caught Pyatt's sleeve not to yank, to warn bones. He projected county calm over a private prayer. Sir, stop. Aim your light at your boots. We're county. We're coming to you on a line. Don't step. Don't say her name again. The man froze like a new company rule just slid down from corporate. He lifted his light, then remembered and put it back on the floor where it belongs. Thayer and Pyatt bellied the last distance. A pocket of water had eaten everything under 5 ties. A plank mercifully there bridged. They slid the man back, clipped him, and sent him out on a promise of coffee. He would later tell the paper he cried, and no one made him feel small for it. He would not tell them the name the tunnel whispered to him to get him inside. When his light was gone, the tunnel was not quiet. The voice came one last time, not the child, or the child, upgraded for cruelty. Your father called for you, and you did not come. Pyatt closed his eyes by reflex, opened them on purpose. Thayer didn't move. He thought of a fluorescent desert overseas. a generator droning in two notes you can hear through walls. He thought of a high school hallway where the light always flickered and a teacher never once guessed what he might be good at. He thought of his mother laying a dish towel over biscuits she couldn't afford and doing it anyway, because sometimes a boy needs to see abundance he didn't earn. He radioed in a voice that knew how to hold a line. At seam, water in bed, void under ties, 10 to 15, past Mark 3. One civilian retrieved. Tunnel, practicing party tricks. We are leaving in a walk. After the flood signed its name and crews policed the driftwood, small pieces that look like birds, big pieces that look like law, the county rebuilt the fence, bolted the sign, and kept the order permanent. The tunnel stayed. The voice, if it stayed, learned boredom, because this county does not answer. What the tunnel changed in Thayer wasn't superstition, it was speed. He started talking slower to people who live half their lives in the dark. He learned to stand on the downstream side of a bad decision, so if someone ignored a fence, his body'd be where it needed to catch them. He untied his boots on the porch, not the kitchen. Thresholds matter. Spring, the county finally replaced that chronic sycamore. A woman, Hetty Dockery, knocked on Thayer's door with a box of rooted maple slips and a photograph from her father's desk. A girl in an expensive dress and a useful coat gone since the 1970s. Hetty asked if he'd go with her to the portal and speak the name once. He didn't correct her, he went. She said the name. The tunnel gave back a sound like the end of a hymn key change. No organ. On the walk down, she stepped steadier than on the way up. Thayer married late. A nurse whose laugh lingers in rooms after the door shuts. They bought high ground, a porch that never needs apology, a basement that never needs courage. Some nights he writes 2 lines to keep the past small. The tunnel is still there, I am still here. In church, when a baby cries during a hymn, he doesn't wince. He lets the sound pass through like a storm already spent over another ridge. Ask him at the gas pump. No nonsense what the voice was. He'll give you the closest truth he owns. The dark repeats whatever it hears most. In a county that refuses to answer when a hole throws names at them, the dark learns boredom and moves on. He'll say it while checking tire pressure before driving out to a grumbling culvert. He'll be behind on sleep and alive. Teenagers will still swear Brushy has a ghost. Good. The night's big enough for practice. Daylight's big enough to remember a man went in, came back, and adjusted his life 1 click slower. Every November, first ash snow, clinging to Brushy's shoulder, Thayer pulls into the turnout, kills the engine, and listens. Sometimes nothing. Good. Sometimes river talking to stone. Better. Once in a while, a faint knock. Wood on wood, in a place with no wood. He does the thing that saved him in the tunnel and saves him in living rooms and hospital corridors where grief learns to smoke. He doesn't answer. He breathes. He makes the world small. He turns the key and drives to the next address, where a drain needs to remember what a drain is. What happened inside that tunnel did change him into the kind of man who practices slow, decent caution. Rope in the truck, second lamp in the pocket, habit of calling the county when a night grows teeth, and taped to the fridge, written in words not numbers, a simple instruction for the people he loves on some future windy night when the siding is practicing scales. If you hear your name from a place that cannot love you, do not answer. Count to 20, call me. Count to 20 again, I'm on my way.